Well, good day, everybody. This is going to be about multiple bytes. Now, we know these ones and zeros, they are not bytes. You have to group these ones and zeros together into a group of 8, and that group of 8 is called a byte. So these ones and zeros are just called bits. Today, we're going to talk about multiple bytes. So we know a byte is a character, like a letter or a numeral or a symbol. How many bytes are across this? How many blue bytes do I have up here? Well, some of them are not blue, are they? Some of them are just blank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. This is 15 bytes. It's 15 characters. We know that a 1 byte is 1 character. But we don't often talk about 1 byte at a time in computers. We talk about bytes in groups. 1,000 bytes has a special name. Do you know what the special name for 1,000 is? There's a special name for 1,000. Kilobyte, kilobyte, and we abbreviate that KB, 1,000 bytes. So I typed exactly 1,000 bytes on this paper. I took a picture of it and I put it on this slide. This is exactly 1,000 bytes. Now wait a minute, do the spaces count as bytes? Yes, they do. What about the period? What about the comma? What about a question mark? Does that count? Yes, it does. Every single character counts. So 1,000 bytes is not very much. 1,000 bytes is only about a quarter of a page, or so. It's not very much. I wonder how much bytes you would have if you filled up the whole page all the way down. Got a guess? Anybody can figure it out? Let's figure it out. If 1,000 bytes is about a quarter of a page, who's the math genius who can figure out how many bytes are on an entire page all the way down? Ah, yes, I just heard all the math geniuses yelling at the screen. One page is about 4,000 bytes. 1,000 bytes is a quarter. 2,000 bytes is about a half a page. 4,000 bytes is one page. Somebody should write this down. Are you taking notes today? 4 kilobytes is about a full page, and I could have squeezed a little more down there at the bottom, but you get the general idea. Now sometimes we talk about 1,000,000 bytes. Here's 1,000, hundreds, thousands, millions. 1,000,000 bytes has a special name. Do you already know what it is? 1,000,000 characters. That's called a megabyte. Mega million. They both start with M. Mega million. A megabyte. And we abbreviate that as MB, a megabyte. Now, if 4,000 bytes fills up a page, I wonder how many pages you need to make it all the way to 1,000,000. Mr. Lushenko, this is not a math class. Let's see, 4,000 bytes for one page. How many pages to get to 1,000,000? Mr. Lushenko, this is not a math class. Yeah, I know. So it's about 250 pages. I know, all you math geniuses were already yelling at the screen. 250, 250. Now, have you ever read a book that had 250 pages in it? I have. I think people mostly in 7th grade, they have read a book that has about 250 pages in it. 250 pages about the size of a small book. 1,000,000 bytes. About the size of a small book. Let's see, hundreds, thousands, millions, billion bytes. There's a special name for 1,000,000,000 bytes. Do you know what it is? Do you know what it is? It's a gigabyte. Gigabyte is abbreviated GB. Are you taking notes? Somebody should be taking notes. 1,000,000,000 bytes is a gigabyte. Well, how much is a gigabyte? A gigabyte is 1,000,000,000 bytes, which is about 1,000 small books. About the size of a small library, I wrote down there at the bottom. Here's a small library. It's got 1,000 books in it or so. That's a gigabyte, 1,000,000,000 bytes. If a megabyte is just one small book, then a gigabyte must be 1,000 small books. Each one goes 1,000 times bigger than the other, huh? A gigabyte. Now, oh my goodness, what is this? Hundreds, thousands, million, billion, trillion. A trillion bytes. You know there's a special name for a trillion bytes? Do you know what it is? Do you know what it is? It's a terabyte. Terabyte. We abbreviate terabyte, TB, terabyte. Let's see, how's it go? 1,000, million, billion, trillion. Trillion bytes. Is there anything that uses a trillion bytes? Here's a trillion bytes. It's about 1,000,000 small books. Well, that's really kind of hard to comprehend. 1,000,000 small books. That's a lot. Here's 1 kilobyte, and here's 1,000 of those. If this is 1, then this is 1,000. It takes 1,000 kilobytes to make a megabyte. Here's 1 megabyte. Here's 1,000 of those. A gigabyte is 1,000 megabytes. It takes 1,000 of these to make it up to this. Here's 1 gigabyte. Here's 1,000 gigabytes. It takes 1,000 of these to make it to one of those, 1,000 times bigger. So here's something for your notes. 1,000 bytes is called a kilobyte. 1,000 kilobytes is called a megabyte. 1,000 megabytes is called a gigabyte. 1,000 gigabytes is called a terabyte. Okay, somebody's got to write that down. So why are we learning this? What difference does it make? Who even cares? Well, if you're in your Google Drive and you're looking at all your files, you might come across one that says it's got 43 KB. So you should know what a KB is. Do you know what a KB is? A KB is a kilobyte. 1,000. That's 43,000 bytes in this picture. What about this one? 5 MB. What's an MB? An MB is a megabyte. How many bytes is a megabyte? Mega starts with an M. Megabyte, million bytes. Which one's bigger? 43 KB or 5 MB? 5 MB is 5,000 kilobytes. This is only 43. Didn't even make it up to 100. This is 5,000. This file, this MP4 file, is a movie file. It's a lot bigger than this little picture file. Here's a picture of my hard drive capacity, and I was looking at it very closely, and it says 451 GB. GB. Does anybody know what GB is? GB is a gigabyte. Well, how much is a gigabyte? A gigabyte is it a million? No, wait a minute. It's not a million. What is it? A gigabyte is a billion bytes. So my hard drive can hold 451 billion bytes. That's not bits. That's bytes. Did you write that down? It's very important. Here's a picture of my hard drive's files. And this miscellaneous MP3 file is a sound file. And it says that the size is 74,486 KB. Well, what's a KB? KB is a kilobyte. It's 1,000 bytes. I know that 1,000 bytes is a megabyte, but I don't have 1,000 bytes. I have 74,000. 74,000 kilobytes is really 74 megabytes. But this says 74,486. 74,486 kilobytes is really 74.486 megabytes. This sound file is 74 million bytes. That's not bits. That's just bytes. Did you write that down? It seems pretty important. Mr. Lushenko keeps showing this over and over and over again. Well, that's about all there is to it for that one. Let's go on to the next video.